My name is Pierce. Detective Alexander Pierce. I've spent most of my adult life solving crimes other people were too afraid to look at. I've seen what knives can do to a body. I've watched lies peel the truth like skin from bone. I've listened to confessions that curdled the air around them. So when my captain told me to take a break, a real break, I didn't argue. He booked me a week in the coastal village of Aramir. Secluded, quiet, a place untouched by time and mostly forgotten by the rest of the country. No cases, no corpses, just skulls, gray skies, and whiskey by the sea. I arrived on a Monday. The air smelled like salt and moss, the kind of dampness that clings to your coat and crawls into your bones. The village was small, maybe 50 buildings in total. One pub, one grocer, one church, a harbor with a few fishing trawlers and one derelict ferry. I checked into my rental cottage. It sat at the edge of the village, backed up against a cliff that overlooked the sea. No neighbors, no noise, just the ocean's slow breathing. I spent the first 2 days walking the shoreline, talking to no one, and trying to feel human again. For a while it worked. Then the silence changed. It was the morning of the third day when I noticed it. The seagulls gone. Not a cry, not a wing in the sky, just stillness. At first I thought I was imagining it, but the locals felt it too. In the pub that evening, I overheard a conversation. "Third time this month," said a man near the bar. "Gone quiet again." "Maybe they know," answered the bartender, not looking up. "Don't," the man replied sharply. "Not in front of outsiders." I nursed my drink and pretended not to listen. But I've learned to read silence like some people read tea leaves. Something was wrong here. That night I couldn't sleep. There was this sound, barely audible, like a hum beneath the wind. I stepped outside. The moon hung low and swollen. The sea below the cliff was unusually still, like glass. Then I saw it. A figure, standing on the beach, motionless. I couldn't make out the details, just the silhouette. Tall, thin, facing the water. I called out. No response. I grabbed my flashlight and made my way down the winding path that led from the cliff to the shore. The rocks were slick with algae, the smell of seaweed stronger than ever. When I reached the beach, the figure was gone. No footprints in the sand. No sound of retreating steps. Just wet stones and silence. But something was left behind. A small wooden charm, hung on a black string, roughly carved. It looked like a face, but distorted. The mouth was wide open, stretching into a spiral. I took it back with me. Mistake, maybe? But curiosity is a hard habit to break. The next day, I showed it to the grocer, a quiet man in his 60s. His face turned pale when he saw it. He told me to throw it into the sea. Said it was part of the old grief. When I asked him what that meant, he only shook his head and said, "You weren't meant to find it." That afternoon, a storm rolled in. Fast, violent. The sky went black by 4. I stayed inside and watched the waves beat against the cliffs. That strange hum, it was louder now. Not mechanical, not human. Something in between. Just before midnight, someone knocked on my door. 3 times. Rhythmic, measured. I opened it slowly. There was no one there. But the charm I had taken was gone. In its place, a stone. Round, smooth, wet, and carved into it, the same spiral as before. Something wasn't just wrong in this village. Something was watching, waiting. I didn't come here to work. I didn't come to investigate. But some cases don't care what you came for. They find you anyway. And I was starting to think this one had been waiting for me. The storm didn't let up. The sky remained bruised, swollen with thunder that never quite broke. The village below looked abandoned. Not a single soul walking the narrow stone streets, not even a candlelight in the windows. I didn't sleep. I sat in the armchair by the fire, the stone from my doorstep resting on the table in front of me. The spiral carved into it seemed deeper now. Or maybe it was a trick of the firelight. By morning, the wind had died, but the silence had grown heavier. I went down to the pub again. Same faces, only now no one spoke. They just stared at their drinks. I approached the bartender. He didn't look at me when I asked, "Have there been disappearances?" He wiped the bar with a slow, deliberate motion. "Don't ask about things you don't want answers to," he muttered. "I'm not on duty," I said. But I know what unease looks like, and you all wear it like a funeral coat, he sighed. For this year. All gone. No sign. No bodies. Any connection? Only one. Each of them stayed at the cliffside cottages. Like you? I left the pub with more questions than answers. Whatever this was, it wasn't folklore anymore. It was a pattern. Back at my cottage, I looked through my notes. I hadn't brought my full kit. This was supposed to be a vacation. But I did have a small notebook, a flashlight, and an old Nikon camera. I started documenting everything. The charm, the stone, the strange markings on the spiral. I visited the harbor. The boats hadn't left in days. An old fisherman sat on a crate, gutting a fish that looked half-rotted. I asked him about the disappearances. They follow the singing, he said. His voice was rasped, like sand on steel. What singing? I asked. He paused. Late at night, just before the tide shifts. You'll hear it, low and wet, like a woman humming through water. You've heard it? He nodded, but his eyes never met mine. Once, never again. That night, I sat by the window and waited. At 2:14 a.m. I heard it. He was right. A faint melody. Not from the wind, not from the sea, from somewhere beneath it. I stepped outside. The path to the shore seemed darker than usual. My flashlight flickered once, then steadied. Down at the beach, the sand felt unnatural. Cold, wet and raw. Like I was walking across a body that hadn't finished decomposing. Then I saw her. She stood knee-deep in the tide, back turned to me. Her dress floated around her like smoke in water. Long black hair hung down to her waist. I called out. She didn't move. I took a step closer. The sand beneath my boots felt like it pulsed. Another step. She turned her head, just slightly. Enough for me to see the edge of her profile. But her face, it wasn't right. Too long. Skin pale, almost translucent. Her eyes were black, not the absence of color, but the presence of something deeper. She opened her mouth. No words. Just the same humming. Louder now. More deliberate. I raised my camera to take a shot. She vanished. Not like someone stepping out of frame. Like mist burning off in sunlight. And at my feet, another stone. Smooth. Carved. This one had a name etched into the back. Eliza. I returned to the cottage. Didn't sleep. Didn't try. In the morning, I found the village church. Old stone. No bell. No priest. The doors creaked open with effort. Inside, dust hung in the air like cobwebs. The altar had been stripped. Only a cracked basin remained, maybe once used for holy water, now dry as bone. A wall of plaques listed villagers lost to the sea. Dozens of names. I looked closer. 4 names added this year. The most recent, Eliza Harrow. No age. No cause. Just a date. 2 weeks ago. I left the church and headed to the town records building. It took a bribe and 2 cups of strong coffee, but the clerk let me look at the missing persons ledger. Eliza Harrow, 29, tourist, stayed at cottage number 5, reported missing 3 days after arrival. No leads, no remains, case closed under coastal disappearance. 3 others before her, all tourists, all stayed at the cliffside cottages. This wasn't a random haunting. This was targeted, deliberate. Something lured them, called them, and I'd been invited to listen. That evening, I found an old path carved into the side of the cliff, half covered by moss and seaweed. Locals had tried to erase it, but I followed it anyway. It led to a sea cave, hidden until low tide. Inside, darkness. The kind you feel. The kind that listens. I took 3 steps in and stopped. Symbols, carved into the stone. Spirals, eyes, mouths. And at the center, a mural, rough but clear. A woman, hair like snakes, mouth wide open. Dozens of bodies kneeling before her, heads bowed. Beneath it, scrawled in red pigment, "The drowned do not forget." I left quickly, my breathing shallow, my pulse too loud. Back at the cottage, I found one final item waiting for me, laid on my pillow, a 3rd stone. This one didn't have a spiral. It had a single word, yours. I hadn't come here to solve anything, but the case had wrapped itself around me. Whatever this was, it wanted me next. But I wasn't going to disappear like the others. I don't vanish. I don't get pulled under. I dig. I uncover, and I bring it into the light. Even if that light has to shine from the bottom of the sea. I didn't waste time. By sunrise, I was down at the harbor again. The old fisherman was gone. So was his boat. Only wet footprints remained on the dock, trailing off into the mist that clung to the sea like cobwebs. I took a skiff without asking. It was poorly maintained, but the motor kicked to life with a bitter growl. The sea was unnaturally calm, not a single wave, as if the water itself was waiting. I followed the coast, keeping the cliff face to my left until I found it, the sea cave, now half submerged. The tide was coming in. I had little time. I anchored the boat and waited inside. The flashlight barely pierced the darkness. My boots sank into silt, and the walls of the cave pulsed with moisture. The symbols I saw the night before had multiplied. Now they stretched across the ceiling, across the floor. Spirals, yes, but also faces, open mouths, wide eyes, all watching. At the center of the cave stood a stone altar. It hadn't been there before. Upon it, 4 stones, identical to the ones I'd received, each with a name: Eliza, Warren, Mia, Colton, and now a 5th one, unmarked. I approached. The air was thick, heavy, hard to breathe. I placed my hand on the 5th stone. Cold, colder than seawater. Behind me, a sound, not footsteps, not breathing, something wetter. I turned slowly. She was there again. Same black dress, same hair, but this time, her face was fully visible, pale, swollen, veins like ink beneath her skin, her eyes glassy, like a corpse long underwater. She didn't speak, just looked at me, and then she pointed, not at me, but behind the altar. I circled it carefully. There was a pit, shallow, filled with brackish water, and in it, a mass of bones, human, twisted together like driftwood. Among them, a camera. I fished it out. Old model. Salt-eaten. But the memory card was intact. Back in the cottage, I uploaded the photos. Dozens of images. Most taken inside the cave. Candles, symbols, people in a circle, heads bowed. Rituals, offerings. The last photo was different. A selfie. Blurry. Taken in panic. The subject, Eliza Harrow. Her eyes wide with fear. Behind her, a shadow. Feminine but wrong. Stretching too long. Arms like seaweed. That was the night she vanished. I now had motive, method, location. But still no answer to the question. Why? I brought the evidence to the local police. They didn't ask how I'd found it. Just looked at me like someone returning from a grave. They sealed the cave the next day. Or tried to. Concrete and steel. Didn't matter. That village will never be clean. The sea gives and takes, yes. But some things it keeps just beneath the surface. And some things, some beings, remember, they feed on offerings, fear, attention. The villagers knew. They had always known. But they had stopped offering strangers. Until someone disturbed the order. Until Eliza saw too much. And I had seen it too. But I didn't vanish. I didn't drown. I documented. I exposed. I wrote the report. And then I left. Weeks later, back in the city, I received a letter. No return address. Inside, a single stone. Smooth. One word carved into it. Pierce. It sits on my shelf now. Sometimes, when the rain falls heavy, and the pipes groan late at night, I swear I hear that humming again. Low, wet, distant, but I don't answer. I've solved the case. That doesn't mean it's over.